Thank you. Cameron Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Ms Garrett, I think we've probably established that some of the things that aren't working so well are along the lines of communication and a lack of transparency. What else isn't working so well, and what is working well in the current approach to promoting and supporting property flood resilience?
Well, with property flood resilience, what we heard from Siobhan and what we hear quite a lot is that people have done all they can to protect themselves, sometimes spending tens of thousands of pounds. And it may protect you more often, but sometimes you will still end up inundated with water, which brings with it dirty, foul water, which brings with it a lot of trauma, a lot of cleaning up. As you know, it can take months, years to get back into homes. I think what we also see with property flood resilience, people ring the helpline, and we've got three kinds of people. We've got people who know and understand they're at flood risk and want to do as much as they can to protect themselves, and they have the resources to do that, even though it's tens of thousands of pounds, and they go on to do as much as they can, although these days they can't get a surveyor for a single property. We've got people who are lucky enough to fall under the £5,000 scheme, even though that's not a huge amount, and they have to put that money up front, certainly the £500 plus for the survey. And then we've got those people who have no access to any additional resources, and that is a huge problem, because if they don't fall under a scheme, they've got no capacity to protect themselves or their properties in any way. So it can be a massive challenge for people.
Thanks very much. Mrs Foley, I think you might have been ready to speak there anyway, but what can your organisation do to square that circle?
Yeah, I think so. We are very positive about wanting to mainstream property flood resilience. So just to be really clear, when it comes to flood risk management, yes, there's flood walls, there's flood barriers, but we also need other things, particularly the reality of climate change. So we need more nature-based solutions, and we absolutely need to help individuals with property flood resilience. It's a really small market at the moment. It's really small, and I think one of our challenges is how do we mainstream it. So there are a few things, and just to give you a sense of the Environment Agency's role, 9 out of 10 property flood resilience measures that are installed in properties in England have been funded on our flood and coastal investment programme. So in terms of the investments that have come, basically nearly all of it has come from the Environment Agency's investment programme to date. What we're seeing, though, is if we need to expand that market, there's a number of things we need to do. So over the years, there has been some instances where householders, and they've certainly come to us and reported this, have lost confidence in property flood resilient measures because they've been installed by people who basically haven't known what they're doing, haven't been trained, haven't been certified, and are not familiar with how to install a floodgate or a flood barrier or whatever it might be. And we need to make sure that that market is properly trained and properly accredited, because most people will not be going to a specialist, they'll be going to their average local builder or tradesperson, and so we need to be able to expand that much more generally. We've also got a real bottleneck at the moment with the availability of property flood resilience products. So there's actually really limited availability, and that's partly because there's only like one major testing centre for property flood resilience, and that's at HR Wallingford. We've actually worked with Hull University to extend and have another independent training testing facility. And obviously it's really important, needs to stay, that we need to test these products before we actually put public money into using them. Again, it's a really key confidence point. So if we're going to build public confidence in property flood resilience, we need to be able to have a sector that is better trained, better certified, and where we have those proper kind of qualifications. At the moment, some of the kind of accreditations that we have to, we insist on, for example, like BSI kite marking, is very good, but the process can be quite slow. And certainly a number of the SMEs in this sector have reported to us that that process is too slow. Today we've actually been, a number of us has been at a major workshop because we've commissioned an independent review by Professor Peter Bonfield. He's Vice-Chancellor at the University of Westminster. You might have possibly heard of him in the context of property flood resilience because he did a review for the then government in 2016, so quite some time ago. We've invited him back, particularly with the support of Minister Emma Hardy, to be able to look at what progress has been made, but to take the journey on further and to say, well, now that people understand what property flood resilience is and we've actually got an ambition to mainstream it, what do we now need to do to make these products much, much more available and to increase public understanding of why property flood resilience is so important. Something that surprises us and often we get feedback from members of the community is that even when a person is flooded, and we talk to them about property flood resilience and if they'll consider that for their home, they don't automatically express an interest. And sometimes they need to be flooded up to 3 times before they would actually consider installing property flood resilience. Yet we know that where a home that has property flood resilience has 70% less damages and repair costs than a home that doesn't.
We're back to the really communication piece again, by the sounds of it. What actions are the Environmental Agency taking to get that working?
Yeah, so about a year ago, we worked with Flood Re, which has a number of mechanisms through flood insurance, including their own Build Back Better mechanism for supporting property flood resilience for homes that have flooded, to do a social media campaign. To be able to raise awareness beyond the conventional routes that public bodies would use, like gov.uk, which actually most people don't use, to actually look at Twitter sites and other forums. We worked with sort of DIY influencers and others who actually would have traction with people. Through the review that I mentioned, Peter Bonfield's review that we're supporting him on, we're actually trying to work with a number of different sectors, those that are not, if you like, the usual suspects when it comes to flood risk management, to be particularly across the building and development sector, to get them more involved in raising awareness. Because actually when somebody's thinking about work in their home, actually they generally go to a trusted builder, a trusted tradesperson, somebody who's been recommended by a friend or a neighbour or a member of the family, and actually you need those individuals to know what property flood resilience is, to be qualified, to have gone through the training, and so we actually need to get to some of the sectoral groups so that they can communicate those messages much more directly to householders, and that's probably one of the most pivotal things that we could do, but it is a focus area and a target of the review that we're doing through the Bonfield.